For thousands of years, the Zelari Empire had spread like a slow-burning wildfire, methodical, overwhelming, and ruthlessly efficient. They didn't conquer with brute force alone, but with psychological domination. They arrived not just with fleets, but with ultimatums. One message, repeated across hundreds of civilizations: submit, kneel. Offer fealty to the eternal throne of Zeller, or be erased from history. No civilization had ever dared challenge them and survived. Evan. The fiercest Deathworlders had eventually bent the knee. It wasn't just about overwhelming firepower. It was about projecting inevitability. The Zelari expected submission was simply how history worked, and now they had come for Earth. The Zelari throne ship. Zoranthian's wrath, a behemoth half the size of Earth's moon, arrived in Sol's orbit, accompanied by an armada of dreadnoughts, cruisers, and blockade ships. From the dark side of the moon, they unfurled their banners in ultraviolet and gravitic pulses. Messages began broadcasting simultaneously to every human device: phones, computers, space stations, satellites. It was a declaration, a demand, performance of dominance. The message was delivered by a Zelari noble, a genetic hybrid bred for intimidation and eloquence. Its voice echoed across Earth's airwaves in a dozen human languages. Humans of Earth, you stand before the eternal throne of Zeller. The cycle is simple. Submit and be made vassals under imperial law. Reject and face extinction. You have 7 cycles to respond. Governments scrambled. Panic rippled through the civilian population. Social media exploded with theories, memes, and dread. Military installations activated emergency protocols. Spaceports were flooded with evacuations and encrypted transmissions. Some nations urged compliance, others advocated retaliation. Most leaders hesitated, caught between the fear of planetary annihilation and the shame of surrendering Earth's sovereignty. But within the unified Earth Command, someone had already stepped forward: Captain Ala Ramirez, a legend in the Black Ops community. Ramirez wasn't a politician, nor a diplomat in the traditional sense. She was a product of Earth's darker conflicts: urban warfare, cyber battles, insurgency operations. What made her dangerous wasn't just her strategic mind. It was her clarity in moments of chaos. She wasn't chosen to negotiate with the Zelari. She was chosen because, if it came to war, she wouldn't hesitate. When she walked into the command center at Unity Base, she didn't wait for approval. She walked straight to the central communications console, her steel-gray uniform unadorned, her expression unreadable. "Patch me to the throne ship," she said. The officers hesitated. Ramirez simply repeated it, calm, but with enough weight to silence every protest. The feed went live. A holoscreen flickered to life, and the same Zelari envoy who had delivered. The ultimatum appeared, its multiple eyes blinking in expectation. Ramirez didn't posture. She didn't read from a script. She spoke directly, her voice calm, unwavering. "You demand our fealty?" she said, locking eyes with the ambassador. "I demand your surrender." Gasps erupted in the command center. Around the world, viewers froze mid-breath. No one had ever spoken to the Zelari like that. Not even Earth's most militant leaders would have dared issue a counter-threat. But Ramirez wasn't bluffing. Her expression never changed. Her words cut through the silence like a blade. "Your fleets orbit our home. You posture, you threaten, expecting fear. But you've made a mistake. You assumed we were like the others." The Zelari envoy didn't respond immediately. On the throne ship, Emperor Vraxen-Zun watched the broadcast with what he believed was amusement. To him, it was the defiance of an insect. Earth's reply was sent across the galaxy. The Council of Allied Races intercepted it. The Skarn warlords paused their feuds to listen. Even the distant Aetherians, reclusive and ancient, took note. Ramirez's message wasn't about Earth's firepower. It was a psychological line drawn in the stars. The Zelari had assumed Earth would kneel because every species before had. But Ramirez flipped the script. It wasn't just defiance. The Zelari Empire did not take threats lightly. especially not from what they considered a primitive Tier 3 civilization on the outer spiral of the galaxy. Captain Allah Ramirez's challenge wasn't just unexpected, it was heretical. For a species to demand Zalari surrender was like an ant roaring at a flame. From his throne aboard the behemoth flagship Ceranthian's Wrath, Emperor Vroxenzoon smiled, with all 6 mandibles. It was not the smile of amusement. It was the cold calculation of a ruler who had eradicated entire species for lesser offenses. "Begin the demonstration," he ordered, and the skies over Earth turned violent. The Zalari strategy wasn't immediate. Planetary annihilation. They wanted Earth broken psychologically and politically. Their fleet launched precision orbital strikes across Earth's surface. Not at civilian centers, but at humanity's pride, Earth's orbital shipyards, its international space stations, deep space telescopes, and relay satellites. The first target was the Stellar Crown Array, an orbital defense project long dismissed as ceremonial by Earth's own citizens. It was obliterated in seconds. Plasma lances carved through the Europa Gate hub. Earth's experimental space jump testbed. Laser barrages disintegrated centuries-old monuments in orbit, not for military gain but to instill fear. Zalari shock troops boarded and dismantled Earth's forward listening post on Neptune's moon. Proteus, broadcasting live images of human defenders being slaughtered in 0G. The message was clear. This is what defiance brings. And for a few brief hours, the Earth trembled. But they didn't shatter. Across the unified Earth's defense network, something ancient and deadly stirred. Protocols long buried under peace treaties were reactivated. Artificial intelligences, once sealed after the Second Mars Accord, reawakened. Among these preparations, one weapon stood out: the Aegis Array, a global orbital defense platform thought, mothballed after Earth's unification war. The moment Zalari warships entered optimal range, the Aegis system came online and returned fire. Streams of hypervelocity tungsten rods, known informally as God's Teeth, slammed into Zalari cruisers. With relativistic force, ships that had mocked Earth's early retaliations now burst into firestorms visible from the surface. Their shimmering purple shields crumbled under the sheer mass and kinetic impact of the attacks. The Earth wasn't defenseless. It had simply waited, watched, learned. Then came the second blow: Earth's stealth fleet. The Zalari didn't know humanity had developed stealth ships. No one did. But when 22 Black Ops cruisers coated with exotic radar-deflecting materials and equipped with subspace jammers decloaked inside the Zalari formation, the Empire's fleet was caught flat-footed. They cut through the Zalari armada like scalpels through silk-targeting command vessels, logistics craft and heavy weapons, platforms with surgical precision. Whole squadrons of Zalari ships vanished in coordinated detonations. At the helm of this counterattack was Captain Allah Ramirez, commanding Earth's most classified vessel, the TNS Revenant, a warship unlike any the galaxy had seen. The Revenant ran on dark matter drives and neural combat prediction systems. It didn't move, like a ship flowed through battle, anticipating enemy trajectories and warping across short-range gaps. Mid-engagement, Ramirez directed the battle like a composer, leading an orchestra of destruction. Her voice was measured, but unrelenting. No dramatics, no panic. Target their node link relays, sever coordination. Force their dreadnoughts to think for themselves. That's when they die. Within hours, the tide turned. What had begun as a punishment had become a rout. Zalari formations fragmented. Their dreadnoughts, no longer linked to their command grid, collided or fired blindly. One flagship, Ulzari's Fang, turned its guns on its own retreating allies in the confusion. The once uncheckable Imperial fleet began to fracture from Earth's orbit. Citizens watched something that would be remembered forever. The skies above Earth caught fire, and the flames were alien, but it was Ramirez's message, sent across the fleet-wide channel, that shook the Empire the most. You mistake our silence for weakness, our peace for passivity. You believed we were like the others, afraid of war, afraid of loss. You were wrong. She paused, letting the feed broadcast the burning hulks of Zalari dreadnoughts falling. Toward the Pacific, didn't prepare for war because we wanted it. We prepared because we knew you were coming. You taught the galaxy to kneel, taught ourselves to stand. The message spread like wildfire in the outer colonies. Resistance cells in other occupied worlds caught wind of Earth's stand. Enslaved races whispered the name Ramirez in awe. Some wept, others rallied. For the first time in generations, the Zelari Empire had faced a full-scale counterattack and bled, and they hadn't even touched the ground yet. As Earth's orbital defense tore through the Zelari fleet, the aliens realized they had grossly underestimated humanity. The plan had been simple: demoralize Earth, extract symbolic obedience, and move on to the next conquest. But Earth wasn't just resisting. It was fighting back like a veteran predator. Faced with unacceptable losses in Earth's orbit, the Zelari pulled back, but not in defeat. They executed a strategic regrouping maneuver. Their next move? Take Mars, the red planet, long terraformed and colonized, had become a vital human outpost, home to military academies, resource operations, and advanced research labs. It was the heart of humanity's outer system operations, and, more importantly, less defended than Earth. The Zelari High Command believed it was the ideal target for a counterstrike. Conquer Mars, hold its colonies hostage, and force Earth into submission. The assumption was logical and completely wrong. Mars had its own teeth, the Zelari. Warships dropped into Martian orbit, expecting a demoralized resistance. What they got was hell and vacuum. Martian surface cannons, buried beneath layers of regolith, emerged and opened fire. These weren't standard planetary defense batteries. They were mining lasers retrofitted with fusion lenses, each capable of cutting through dreadnought armor like a scalpel through skin. Civilian engineers, miners, and terraformers fought alongside military forces. They armed themselves with rail tools, repurposed cargo haulers into kinetic missile sleds, and used atmospheric vents to turn the very air into weapons. The Martian atmosphere had always been thin. Now, that was an advantage. When Zelari dropships descended to launch troop deployments, Martian combat engineers hijacked weather control satellites, generating localized storms to scatter the landing crafts and tear them apart mid-descent. Even more shocking were the Martian Marine soldiers who trained in subgravity, accustomed to higher-risk combat in near-vacuum environments. These weren't conscripts, they were elite vacuum-born warriors equipped with zero-G exosuits and magnetic boots. They boarded Zelari warships mid-orbit, using guided launch tubes and grappling drills. Squads of Martians infiltrated enemy cruisers like viruses in a bloodstream. They didn't bring overwhelming numbers. They brought sabotage, misdirection, and fury. Whole ships went dark within hours of contact. Enter the Revenant as Mars turned into a battlefield unlike anything the Zelari expected. The most terrifying arrival came from the shadows of Phobos. The TNS REV-ENANT captain, La Ramirez, had used Earth's battle as a distraction, timing her arrival at Mars with such precision that her ship blinked into Martian orbit between enemy patrol routes. Undetected, the Revenant wasn't just Earth's strongest vessel, it was its ghost. Silent, invisible, until the moment it struck, and impossible to track once it moved. Its dark matter engines allowed it to shift across microjumps within a system, dodging traditional sensors. Once in orbit, Ramirez didn't hesitate. Target command relay stations. Cripple their hierarchy, she ordered. Then prepare for breach. Earth's strategy was never about full-scale annihilation. It was about decapitation, cut off the head, and the body panics. With pinpoint strikes, the Revenant eliminated 4 of the 7 command ships orchestrating the Martian assault. The remaining 3 scrambled, but Ramirez had already launched her. Next move, she stormed the throne ship. The assault on Zaranthian's Wrath. Zelari flagship Zaranthian's Wrath was the largest ship in the Martian engagement. After Emperor Zun's earlier command, it had moved closer to Mars, serving as the Empire's command nexus. Ramirez knew it had to fall. She led a hand-picked strike team of Martian Marines and Revenant specialists in a direct boarding assault. A move so reckless, even Earth's admirals had flinched when they first saw the plan. They launched from the Revenant in stealth shuttles, used redirected space debris for cover, and burned through the flagship's lower hull using thermite-tipped drills. The Zelari had never experienced a boarding action like this. Their corridors, designed for ceremonial honor guards and elite warriors, became killing grounds. Earth soldiers moved like phantoms, fast, brutal, efficient. Zelari officers tried to rally defenders, but the psychological effect of being attacked on their own throne ship shattered morale, and then, the heart of the command bridge, Ala Ramirez stood before Emperor Vroxenzoon. The execution of a Godzun towered over her 8 feet of bio-enhanced musculature, genetic armor plating, and a voice engineered to paralyze prey. His guards lay dead behind her. His empire's fleet was disintegrating outside, but even then he sneered. "You came to kneel at my feet," he asked, voice low. Ramirez leveled her weapon. "No," she said. "I came so you'd die on yours." And she fired. 1 shot to the knee, 1 shot to the chest, 1 to the head. Aftermath with the Emperor's death, the Zelari fleet fell into chaos. Every command node trembled with uncertainty. Orders conflicted. Ships fled. The battle for Mars ended. Not with a surrender, but with collapse. Entire formations abandoned their objectives. Some Zelari commanders, too proud to return defeated, self-destructed their ships. Humanity hadn't just defended a planet, it had cracked the Empire's spine. The death of Emperor Vroxenzoon aboard Zaranthian's Wrath sent a shockwave through the Zelari Empire, not just strategically, but psychologically. The unthinkable had happened. The unchallenged sovereign of an ancient galactic power had been executed by a human commander in close-quarters combat aboard his own throne ship. In the middle of a battle he was supposed to win. This wasn't just a military loss. It was symbolic annihilation. And it shattered the illusion of Zelari invincibility. For the first time in 10,000 years, the Zelari Empire began to break. Collapse from within the Zelari Empire wasn't a monolithic power. It was an amalgamation of conquered species, client, states, and vassal systems held together by a rigid hierarchy of fear. Fear of the Emperor, fear of the fleets, fear of being the next example. That fear evaporated the moment Ala Ramirez put 3 bullets in Versanzine. The outer provinces were the first to ignite. Rebellions, long suppressed and barely surviving in secrecy, suddenly found purpose. On the jungle world of Cathara, the insectoid Crixie, once reduced to slave labor, stormed their overseers and seized control of a fleet depot. On the mining moons of Valdrix, the silicon-based Valdri turned their excavation lasers on the Empire's troops and declared independence. These uprisings weren't isolated, they were coordinated. Ramirez's broadcast from Mars, streamed across thousands of relay channels, had included a direct message to the galaxy's oppressed. We don't want your planets. We don't want your gold. We don't want your chains. We want your freedom. Rise or remain slaves. The message was simple, raw, and defiant. It was everything the subjugated needed to hear. One by one, systems peeled away. Some revolted. Others declared neutrality and stopped paying tribute. Some Zelari governors even switched sides, offering strategic assets to Earth in exchange for protection. The Empire wasn't being dismantled by bombs. It was being abandoned from within. Earth refuses the throne humanity. Now faced a historic opportunity. Earth could have claimed the mantle of dominator. The Revenant was unmatched in firepower. Zelari fleets were scattered. Alien worlds pleaded for human support. The stars lay open for conquest. But Earth refused to become the next empire instead. Ramirez made another broadcast, this one from Europa Base, where a Zelari delegation, stripped of rank and pride, came to beg for a ceasefire. The Council of Ashen Lords, composed of surviving aristocrats and military leaders, stood before her in ceremonial robes, expecting negotiation. What they received was not diplomacy. It was terms of surrender. There will be no treaties. Ramirez said, there will be no tribute, no vassalage. You will not rebuild the empire under a new name. You will not wear old chains and call them new. You will dismantle your slave markets planet by planet. You will dissolve your genetic caste systems. You will open your archives and reveal every species you've destroyed. You will submit to justice, not ours, but your own people's. They objected, they begged, they offered riches, ships, entire star systems in exchange for mercy. Ramirez was unmoved. Mercy, she repeated. We gave that chance. On day one, you answered with fire. The Zalari accord with the Empire collapsing, and no unifying throne to stabilize it. A new governing body emerged, the Zalari Accord, a provisional alliance of liberated worlds, former vassals and dissident nobles attempting to transition into a federation. Earth sent no armies to oversee this. No occupation fleets, only advisors, engineers, doctors, and historians. A quiet army of reconstruction. This shocked the galaxy. Even more than Earth's military victory, they had faced an enemy that could have replaced tyranny. With its own bootbutt chose instead to help its former enemies rebuild. Too many, this seemed a to others, revolutionary, and to the broken Zalari nobility, it was humiliating. But they complied because Earth had made something clear: you will change, or you will fall completely. Ramirez becomes myth back on Earth. Ramirez declined every medal. Parades were held in her honor, but she never showed. Statues were built. On Mars, Europa, and even by freed species across the stars, but she had already disappeared from the public eye. Not into retirement, into readiness. Ramirez knew this wasn't the end of war, just a turning point. Somewhere, someone would fill the vacuum left by the Zalari. Some race or ideology would try to claim the stars again. And when they did, they'd find Earth waiting not to conquer, but to remind. She left a final message for future generations. Recorded anonymously, but universally recognized by her voice: the day you think you can rule without justice. Remember the day we said no? And what followed? The galaxy would never forget. A year had passed since Emperor Vroxin. Zun's throneship was reduced to wreckage over Mars. The once mighty Zalari Empire was no more, its hierarchy shattered. Its pride crushed, and its control splintered into chaos. The galaxy that once trembled beneath its boots now found itself in an unfamiliar age. One of uncertain freedom. But out of that uncertainty came something no one expected. Hope, the aftermath of defiance in the absence of the Zalaris iron grip. Dozens of newly independent worlds rose up not as warring factions, but as builders. Across the stars, the fires of rebellion were replaced with sparks of reconstruction. Starports once used to ferry slaves now welcomed trade ships. Banners that once bore the sigils of conquest were torn down and replaced with the colors of cooperation. At the center of it all was Earth, but not as a conqueror. Humanity refused to take the Empire's place. Instead of occupying former Zalari territories, they sent advisors, relief vessels, mobile hospitals, and even volunteer teachers and linguists. Where the Zalari had taken, Earth gave. Where the Zalari had enslaved, Earth liberated. Even former enemies were stunned by humanity's restraint, and yet, everyone kept an eye on the woman who made it possible, Captain Ala Ramirez. Legacy of a warfighter, Earth offered every honor Earth could give. Statues, medals, political office. Ramirez accepted none. She refused interviews, denied biography rights, and quietly resigned from active duty. The world searched for her. The Accord worlds begged for her wisdom. And alien emissaries traveled light years just to understand who she truly was. But she was gone. Disappeared into the quiet shadows of Earth's military intelligence web. To her, the war was over, but vigilance was eternal. What mattered wasn't her fame, but the lesson left behind. Do not build empires, she once said in a closed council. Build worlds worth defending. Those words became doctrine, a banner across the stars even in her absence. Ramirez's message took root across liberated worlds. Humanity's banner was not seen as a symbol of dominance, but as a beacon of warning. Earth fights when provoked and finishes what it starts. On Cathera, the Crixie erected a monument of Ramirez, standing atop shattered chains, flanked by humans and insectoids arm in arm. On Voldrex, Every mining shaft bore a carved seal. We rise because they stood. The phrase Ramirez Standard became slang in the Accord military academies, a benchmark for impossible excellence. And every new naval vessel built under the Accord bore a single human. Phrase stamped somewhere on its hull: we do not kneel. Fear, respect, and balance. Not all viewed Earth's restraint as peacekeeping. In the dark corners of the galaxy where warlords, remnants of the Zelari regime, or power-hungry races waited, humanity's response was seen as an opportunity to prepare, to rebuild their own forces and challenge Earth anew. But that fear was exactly what Ramirez had counted on. Earth didn't need to rule the galaxy. It needed only one thing: to be the reason no one else tried. Every intelligence network, every new military doctrine from the former Zelari sectors carried a warning: engage humanity only if you plan to lose everything. Even the word Terran became a deterrent. Pirates avoided Terran lanes. Black markets refused to trade in human tech. Mercenaries were instructed to flee if they saw a ship bearing Earth's colors, because when the Empire had demanded fealty, Earth had replied with a blood-soaked warning and then walked away. The final message: no. One knows where Ramirez went. Some say she took a ship and disappeared into uncharted space, watching, waiting. Others say she works behind the scenes, shaping the Accord quietly. Still others believe she lives simply, anonymously, among the stars she once defended. But before she left, she recorded one last broadcast. It was sent not to Earth, but to thee. Liberated worlds, you don't need humans to lead you. You need only remember who you are without chains. They will come again. Another empire, another tyrant. That is the nature of power. But when they do what we did.
Out.
Ask permission. Don't wait for permission. Just stand. The age that followed, the era that followed, became known not as the Human Empire or post-Zelari Age, but simply the Dawn. It wasn't perfect. Conflicts still occurred. Diplomacy remained complex, but fear no longer ruled the stars. Galaxy had learned that submission wasn't the only path to survival, that courage mattered, that one voice, one ship, human, could be the tipping point. And whenever tyrants began whispering again, looking to the stars with hunger, they remembered Earth. They remembered her. Humanity didn't ask for the galaxy's loyalty, but when it demanded their surrender, the galaxy listened.